All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is our third immigration segment, and today we're going to talk about sponsors. So, last time I was here, I wasn't feeling well. I'm still not feeling well right now, and it's a different problem, but we're going to get through. Listen, if you don't live in the state of Georgia, stay where you are. This is the time of year when everybody who has never been sick gets sick in Georgia. One minute it's 95 degrees, and the next minute it's 30. All right, so uh, let's start talking about sponsorships and sponsors. So, USCIS has made it possible for a petitioner to petition for a relative, a spouse, a child, a parent, any family member that you petition for. If you cannot support them, you can get backup from somebody else to add to your income so that you will qualify for petitioning for that relative. So, as an attorney, it's my responsibility to ensure that the sponsor understands their role. There are a lot of attorneys who do not explain to sponsors what their role really is. And I have to protect myself and my license. So I explain to all my sponsors what their role is and make sure that they understand that they're entering into a contract with USCIS / the US government. So the I-864 is the affidavit of support that the sponsor fills out. Now, this affidavit of support is what the sponsor would complete and submit along with the petitioning person's petition, whether it's for a parent, a child, a spouse, whoever it is. Now, there's a section in the affidavit of support that I'm going to pull up right now so I can read it to you guys because it's very important. And I always try to ensure that every person who comes to my office that's getting someone as a sponsor tells them what it is that they're doing, because there are a lot of times I talk to sponsors and they're completely unaware of what it is that they're getting into. So USCIS has what's called a poverty guideline. So the poverty guideline is what is used to determine whether or not the petitioner and or the sponsor qualifies for taking on the additional responsibility of this person that is being petitioned for. So let me give you an example. So let's say, for example, A petitions for B, and A's yearly salary is $20,000, and A's household has A and a spouse and 2 children. So that's 4 people. And A is trying to bring their parent, one, here to the US. That's going to make 5 people in the household. So USCIS wants to make sure that with the 4 people in your household and you bringing in a 5th person, that you can support them. And they're going to look at your household income, your household number, and your household income to determine whether or not you can support this person. So, just an example. This is not what it is, but this is just an example. So, at $20,000, you have 4 people in your household and you're bringing a 5th person. USCIS say, nah, you can take on this responsibility. So, you can get a joint sponsor to help you to meet this goal. So, the contract between the joint sponsor and USCIS The wording is very, very tricky. So I'm going to pull up the contract itself, and it is actually in the form itself. It's not in the instructions, it's on the form itself, and I'm going to find it right now, and I'm just going to read one little section, and it's going to be on page 8 that says sponsors contract. And it says, please note that by signing this form I-864, you agree to assume certain specific obligations under the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is the INA, and other federal laws. The following paragraphs describe those obligations. So it talks about a lot of things in this contract, but specifically, I want you to know that this contract you can only be relieved from this contract under 2 conditions. One, the person comes out of permanent resident status and is a citizen, or if they have 40 working hours. Let me see if that's the wording that they have in here. And their 40 working hours, I believe it's 10 years that it'll take for them to get there. Let me make sure that I have that right. So while I'm looking for that, so let me give you another example. So let's say that B comes, so A petitions for B, and A gets C as a joint sponsor. C signs the I-864, puts their salary on, and say, hey, if A cannot support B, hey, I'm over here. I will help A to support B. So 3 years pass. B falls on hard time. B is no longer in communication with A or C, and B has no job. B decides to apply for TANF or food stamps or something, and is granted that in whatever state they're in. A and C are fully responsible for B. So let me explain that to you. Whatever monies the government or the state where B is in gives to B, either in the form of food stamps or housing or any government aid whatsoever, the state or the government can recuperate that from C. Okay, so it's 40 quarters of coverage under the Social Security Act. So typically that's about 10 years. So you can only be relieved from this contract when the beneficiary becomes a citizen, or if they have worked 40 quarters of coverage under the Social Security Act. Okay? There's one other circumstance. If the beneficiary abandons their permanent residency, and that means they say, hey, I don't want to be a permanent resident anymore, I don't want to be in the US, and they leave and they go home back to their home country. So those are the 3 circumstances. I don't know of any other circumstance. Yes, if they die. That's automatic. If they die, it's another circumstance. So with that being said, there are several contracts. There are several I-864 contracts for sponsors. So one, you can be a first joint sponsor, or you can be a second joint sponsor. So USCIS thinks about everything, right? So they have created also a household contract, a household member contract. So let's say, for example, you have 2 families living in the same house, and the petitioner is a part of that family, and the petitioner says, okay, my income is 30,000, but there's somebody else in my household that can give me 50,000 of their salary to put with my 30 to make 80, so I can bring both my parents here. Well, that contract is the I-864A is in Apple, and the household member enters into that contract with the other household member, which is the petitioner. So those are the two sponsorship petitions that exist that can be used when you're petitioning for someone. USCIS, if you go to their website, uscis.gov, there's a search box, and you can put in that search box 2025 2025 poverty guidelines, and it will break down for you what the household number is and what the dollar amount is. This way you can know whether or not you qualify before you even reach out to an attorney to see, if you can petition for your relative. All right, so let me talk about this particular thing that USCIS does. So if you are married, right? This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen, but it is a thing, right? So if you are married and you and your spouse have separated for 500 years, you have no idea where he is, you have no idea where she is, and you are doing a sponsorship petition for someone else. When you are counting the persons in your household, if you are not divorced, USCIS requires for you to add your husband or wife if you're not divorced, regardless of whether you know they're there or whether they live with you or not, whether they're in Timbuktu or whether they're down the road. You have to include them on your petition because you're married. So it doesn't matter whether or not you are talking, whether or not you're in the same house, or whether or not you're living apart. You have to include your spouse, if you're not divorced, in your household number. All right, so that's one little pet peeve of USCIS. Let me see. What else I wanted to talk to you about for sponsorships, types of sponsorship. So you have joint sponsor first. So the initial sponsor is the petition. Then there's a joint sponsor that you can use, and you can have more than one joint sponsor. There's also a substitute sponsor. And I've rarely seen this, but it does occur. And the substitute sponsor is a sponsor that fills in the gap for the petitioner if the petitioner passes. So let's say Mary files for John and the petition is being processed, but in the process of waiting, Mary passes. Then John can get somebody else to stand in Mary's stead and replace Mary because she passed. And like I said, USCIS thinks of everything. Some things make sense, some things don't. So that's one of the good things that they have done. See if there is anything else I want to talk about. Talked about separated spouses. Yes, so if you don't have enough income, your yearly income is inadequate as a petitioner, you can supplement your income with assets. So let's say, for example, you have a house and your house is valued at $400,000 and your mortgage that you owe on your house is $200,000. This means you have $200,000 in equity, and you can use that to supplement your income. You can use your 401k to supplement your income. You can use savings to supplement your income. So anything financial that you have that you can show proof of it to USCIS, you can use it to supplement your income. So for purposes of supplementing income, USCIS wants legitimate documents. So for bank accounts, they want a statement from the bank. And this is not your monthly statement that comes in the mail or in your email every month. That's not what they want. They want an actual statement coming from the bank. So you have to walk into the bank and get that statement. For purposes of using your home, they want an appraisal showing what your home is valued, and then your mortgage statement that shows what you owe so that they can determine and calculate. They have a formula that they use to calculate how much equity you have left in your house in order to use that to supplement your income. Alrighty, and let me see if there's anything else that I want to talk about. Talked about the 40 quarters of work, which is usually 10 years work history. Right. So let's talk a little bit about, and then this is the end after. Let's talk a little bit about why people are hesitant to be sponsors. The reason they're hesitant is because they realize that this is a contract, and it's very rare that I've seen this happen, but it has happened, and you have to be mindful of it. When beneficiaries are here, sometimes beneficiary and petitioner don't get along anymore, and they don't care what happens to the petitioner who brought them here. You have to be really, truly cruel to do something like that, but people have done that. So make sure that when you do these things, that it's somebody that somebody that you trust, somebody that you know will not do something shady or unscrupulous to you. All right, so I know it sounds frightening, but if you want to do something for somebody and you truly care for them, then you wouldn't put them in that position, right? All right, so that's all for now. That's my backyard. Okay, so that's all for now. Next time, we are going to talk a little bit about immigration scams. Now, I've heard a lot of stories about those, so I'm going to share some of them with you and tell you what to look out for and what to do and what not to do. Until then, I will see you next time, and you can find us online at marshallslaw.com. marshallslaw.com. You can reach out to us. All the information for the firm is online, as well as a contact form if you want to reach out to us. And again, if you have questions, make sure that you put them in here so that before I address the next topic, I will address those questions. Have a great day until I see you again. Bye bye.